Welcome. So this year is going to be 20th anniversary of 9/11, right? So here's my story. That morning, I worked the overnight the night before on the 10th, right? And I get off the morning of the 11th. I go home. At the time, my sons were, 1.5 and like 6 months or something like that. But they were toddlers. So I go home, I get home, I'm sleeping, try to go to sleep. And then my wife knocks on, she wakes me up. She goes, a plane just hit the World Trade Center. I'm like, yeah, are you kidding? Get out of here. So she puts on CNN and there it is, right? I go, oh man, that's bad. So I kind of go back to sleep. She comes in again. Another plane just hit the World Trade Center. What? So I jump up and I'm like, this is intentional. In my mind, I'm like, all right, this is intentional. This is real bad. So at that time we had pagers. All employees from my department had pagers, and the pager went off. Everybody come in. So I got up, packed the bag because I knew it was going to be more than just an 8-hour shift. Left my wife and my 2 young toddlers. Same thing. Rushed into work. I got deployed down to Forest Hills. I went to pick up some supplies for the OR they had set up down at Chelsea Piers, and myself, and 2 other coworkers drove right into to Chelsea Piers and helped set up down there. And to me it just spoke to when you said we get up and we just go in. Yep. And I left. My wife was scared, of course. She's got 2 toddlers there. I don't think I went back home for like 2 days. I think I stayed at work for. But my experience down at Ground Zero was, honestly, we rushed all the way there, lights and sirens blazing. But by the time we got there, the second tower had already fallen by that time. But we were just in a long caravan of EMS providers and medical providers that were just waiting for patients, and there were no patients. Yeah, by the time we got there, it was just like eerie silence. I saw not one patient down at Ground Zero, and that was like, it really hit. Like, oh, this is very, that's not a good sign. So that was kind of my 9/11 story. Back to the Lights and Sirens podcast with your host, Bernie Robinson. Today is September 11th. There are a lot of memorials, tributes, ceremonies going on, news specials, documentaries, TV specials, and everything else going on. And we are being definitely inundated, justifiably and rightfully so, with remembering what happened on this day 20 years ago. We all have a story of what we were doing on September 11th, whether we were responders, we were working, we were home, in school. I find myself now at work with employees and staff that were in middle school during September 11th, or maybe not even born yet at that time. And it's crazy, but that's how long it's been. This is definitely a solemn day. And I think about a lot of the people I work with, some that are suffering long-term effects from, extended exposure down at Ground Zero, some that died on that day, tragically. And it's just a day of reflection for me. I thought about a lot of what I was going to do for this episode, but you know what? Everybody else is doing so much. I just wanted to talk about it as, just talk about it. And that's it. No special guests, nothing like that. And just kind of reflect as myself on that day. I did share my story, my 9/11 story, which you've heard by now. And, it's anticlimactic, to say the least. And that's not, necessarily a good thing when you think about all the victims that there were, and to not, have that rush of patients. Obviously, in the initial occurrence, there was the rush, and then everybody kind of jumped on ferries and over the bridge and got out of town as fast as possible. So,
the immediate epicenter. That's not where the patients were, but they were at the outer hospitals, and we did see a lot of that. But just I remember that feeling of, wow, there's no patients, and we were ready to go. And that day, it was a crazy day. It was a nice day, very clear out, and we got that call. But I also remember, missing coworkers that couldn't be located. One particular coworker, I think he was one of our supervisors, was down there and they could not locate him for probably close to 6 to 8 hours because there was no cell phone service once the towers collapsed. And I just remember the panic and the fear in everyone's face, the concern for that coworker, that missing supervisor, who later ended up being found safe and is still doing well. But tons of stories like that. And then there were people who didn't come back or weren't recovered, and we lost coworkers. I remember seeing a poster of the victims, the EMS. There were a lot of different posters, right? There were posters with all of the firefighters that perished. And then there was a poster I saw with EMTs and medics that perished. And I'm looking at the posters and I'm picking off the people that I know, going, wow, I knew this guy, I knew that guy. I remember there were 2 young guys that I worked with when I worked at New York City EMS. And they were new, they were rookies, Jimmy Coyle and Joe Henry, and good guys, great, young guys. They were working in EMS, but their goal was to, take the ladder path into the fire side, because at that time we had merged with FDNY, Fire Department of New York. And, it was allowed that they made it so that if you were an EMT or a paramedic, you could be promoted to a firefighter. So these guys, what happened was a lot of the younger guys would come in that wanted to be firefighters, and it was a pathway to get to fire. You go through EMS, and then you upgrade, if you will, to firefighters. So that was a path at the time a lot of younger guys were taking that wanted to become firefighters. And these 2 guys were 2 of those candidates. And I worked with both of them. And, we talked, they were cool. And I remember seeing their faces on the poster of firefighters that perished, And that hit, like, wow, I knew these guys. I sat in an ambulance with these guys. We joked around, So I always remember those 2 guys because we worked in Station 36 together, New York City EMS. And that definitely hits home every year. I remember I saw firefighter Andre Fletcher. And I remember Andre because he was a FDNY firefighter, but he was also a paramedic. And he was a black guy. So you thinking back then, I think the fire department might have been 2% black back then. And I remember seeing him on the calls and thinking, wow, this guy is like, I kind of looked up to him. Like, he's a black guy, he's a firefighter, which was rare, and he's a paramedic, which was kind of rare. But he did both, and he's a good guy, funny. He'd be on scenes, very cool, very approachable. But like I said, it was just something like, wow, he hit 2 goals that are hard to reach. And he was well respected, well liked, and just, I remember I see his face on the poster. I'm like, wow, can't believe he's gone. He worked out, I believe they were in the Canarsie area of Brooklyn. So whenever I did, motor vehicle accidents or jobs of that nature in Canarsie, we would do calls and his firehouse would respond. So we would, see each other on scenes of calls like that. So I remember him, and there were dozens some partners that I thought were missing that later turned up, which was a relief. And just, like I said, it's part of the job, but it's something that we remember. And there are dozens more that I know, that died after. But, just touching on those 3 guys, because I remember them vividly. These are people I, physically worked with or saw every day. And I do believe at that time I had already left New York City EMS to work where I currently work, Northwell EMS. But had I been working for New York City still at that time, I definitely would have either been down there immediately or spend an extended amount of time afterwards, on special details, because that's just what we did. We did it. One, for the love of the job. Two, obviously, it was overtime. And I know a lot of my friends and former coworkers spent hours and hours and hours for months down at the pile, working either morgue detail or whatever detail they had, to for them to do. And, I think about their safety all the time and their health, as well as my own from being down there. Like I said, my time wasn't extended down there. It was all the whole first day. But then I actually stayed at work probably for 2 days straight. Just because you got to realize we have an operation, but we also, we have an entire other operation. We are part of a health system. So we had to make sure that the regular business continues as well, right? Business continuity. So in addition to all the resources we had allocated for the emergency response down at 9/11, we still had an operation that had to be run. So we're still doing our transports between different facilities and those obligations that we had. So imagine you have, 15, 25% of your resources dedicated to this emergency, and then the rest of it is trying to function without cell phone capabilities and everything else on limited technology and still keep the day-to-day operation running, which is a very big operation. One of the largest EMS departments in the East Coast to keep running and functioning. So that was the task that our leadership had also at the time, and it was an all hands on situation. And I think that, we rose out of it. We definitely became stronger for it or from it. And we learned a lot. And that's what we have to do in this business. You learn and then you add that to what you already know, and then you grow. So I'm proud of the response from, just the industry that we had to this and the improvements that were made because of it. And, I definitely never forget that day. Specifically, I won't forget the drive in to Chelsea Piers, which is, all right, so Chelsea Piers is probably about a quarter of a mile north of where the World Trade Center actually is, if not maybe a little longer than that. But, we were a bit from the pile itself, where the officers and the firefighters were still searching and down in there. But the ride in, driving from Queens into Manhattan, we drove through the tunnel, and I was with a coworker of mine, Ray Smith, and Tim Dackow. It was the three of us driving. And Ray Smith was driving, and Timmy was, I believe, in the front passenger seat. I was in the back, strapped in, and Ray was probably driving about 100 miles an hour, just fixated on getting in there. You could see the smoke billowing out of the ground, this huge plume of smoke, 2 plumes of smoke, and the adrenaline's going, and Ray is just driving probably at least 100 miles an hour. No cars were on the road except for emergency vehicles. And I remember Timmy screaming at him, slow down, and it was just a chaotic ride in. And it feels like we got there in seconds. And the three of us every year, we reflect and remember that day. Because, like I said, we spent that day together with the other responders and, down there. But just some memories that I had, my personal memories from that day. And I guess this is kind of like, I don't really talk that much about this day other than with my wife, and a few friends. But it's like, hey, very brief discussions, but never really talked about the day itself. But it was a lot happening. And I remember also at 9/11, when we were at the hospitals, the people, the public, were coming up to us asking what they can do. How can they help? Is there anything we can do? Where can we donate blood? And you could see in their eyes, they genuinely just wanted to do something. They felt helpless because, they just witnessed all of this death and destruction. And it was people of all races, sizes, shapes, genders, colors, whatever, pronouns. And it didn't matter. They just wanted to help and donate blood. And, one of the things I remember is that at the worst, one of the darkest hours in history, it brought out the compassion in everyone, and it's just kind of, amazing to see that in these worst times. And in this field, we see it, right? We'll see a bad accident or a bad event and people want to help, and people, that it kicks in. And like I said, it doesn't matter who you're helping. You just want to help that person and those people. And there was an outpouring of that, which was amazing. And the only other time I saw it to that magnitude was during COVID-19, obviously, where people were just donating masks and trying to help and donating food. So, it's crazy. There's a lot of craziness happening in the world, but it just seems like there are times when people just do genuinely come together, and it's out of the desire to help someone. And that's our basic form. And I think that's our basic nature of humanity. All this other crap that comes with it after and stuff that you learn and behaviors are one thing. But in times of tragedy like this, you see that people do have good nature as well. And they genuinely care about other people. So that's my 9/11, talk and discussion, and I guess it's been a while since I've spoken, or we've had an episode, but I'm back. We're back, and we are looking to have guests. If anyone who has a story that they want to discuss or share, I'm looking to highlight firehouses, precincts. I'm looking to highlight EMS stations, companies, agencies, departments. We're looking to go into topics of discussion that affect the first responder world. And this is the place where you want to come and you want to bring it. We're highlighting, recently we had on a congressional candidate who, is an EMT and also an RN. I got a mayor or two that I know that have history in emergency services. So, this place is open to politicians. We're not a political show, but listen, you'll find that first responders have branched into more than just, becoming law enforcement or EMS. We've branched out into, politics. We're shaping the world, and it all started by being an EMT or being a firefighter or being a police officer. But we grow up. And we launch out into the world, and we're affecting the world. And this is the place where we're going to talk about it. So I guess you could call this moving into the next season of the show. But I'm very excited for what's to come. I'm very excited for the content we're going to be bringing. September 26th, I will be down running the Tunnel to Towers 5K. And, hopefully I'll see some of you there if you're in the New York City area. Otherwise, you can always tune in here and we'll talk about the hottest topics in the industry and the best experts and professionals. Whether you're a rookie police officer or EMT, or you are the vice president of the biggest agency there is, you have a voice here at the Lights and Sirens podcast. So, tune in and just be ready for what's to come. Thank you. Bernie Robinson signing off.